Hi, Mackenzie.
Hey, Lemar.
So we last week we already did Wet Hot American Summer. We talked about summer camp a little bit, and I didn't want to rehash that. We have with Moonrise Kingdom this week. We have sort of like a scout troop. It feels very summery though, like a getaway. But bypassing that question, what part of this movie? There's a lot going on. What part do you most relate to?
Well, I think everybody has like a little infatuation crush kind of thing at some point that you could relate to, which sort of
Mm-hmm.
happens here. But I most closely relate to the runaway attempts that happen
How
here on
many
a
times
recurring
did you
basis.
try to run away from home?
Like, I maybe lost count to be totally transparent. I can remember two distinct occasions, and I think there were more, but those were the two most dramatic.
So your
Uh,
parents would have been the couple in this that are like, "Don't send our kid back. We're done." Like
Yeah,
they've run away
they
so
would
many times.
100% be calling and being like, "We're all good. You can keep her. We're
Okay, you want
super
to live by
over.
yourself? Fine.
Yeah, you're done. Goodbye." And I remember on more than one occasion I ended up sitting in a like off near a wooded area basically that was off of my neighborhood where kind of the
Hmm.
neighborhood ends with my knapsack situation,
Yeah.
just like nowhere to
Did you
go. I
you had
had
the
no
over the shoulder
over
number
the
with
shoulder
like the
stick. Yeah, you got to have the ties or it doesn't count, Yeah, for sure. And I was just sitting there, nowhere to go, had no real plan before cell phones. And I don't remember what happened one of the times, but I know I was rescued by a friend's mom one time. And
hmm.
then I do know another time my dad definitely just like found me and was like, "You're coming home. Okay, bye." So
I
really
would
anticlimactic to some degree, but yeah.
I would love to dig into the reasons why you were running away from home, but we do not have that much time.
I was a brat is the
Okay.
summation. We can get into the
That's the
nitty-gritty
adult
someday,
answer.
but
That is a very
ultimately,
mature answer of you.
yeah.
Good for
Yeah, I
you.
was I was just a brat. What about you? What is your thing from this movie?
I think there's three options for the things I most relate to. Number one is when the one kid says to his, I guess, girlfriend at that point, "I love you, but you have no idea what you're talking about." Don't tell
Rough,
Janelle
man.
that I said that, but sometimes when you're in a committed relationship, that's how it feels. I love
Yep.
you, but you have no idea what you're
You have
talking about.
no idea. Mhm.
Which leads me to number two, which is Bruce Willis sleeping on the floor with just a pillow under his head, because that's where that gets you. So I've
Mhm.
been there
Mhm. You
before,
can't
maybe not in the
actually
scene.
say it. Yeah, you can't actually say it or that's where you end up for sure. Yeah.
And then number three, who doesn't love some good turtle tossing when the kid has the turtle and just tosses it back into the lake?
Oh my
you know,
god. I love that you could that's the top 3 that you can relate to
I
here.
didn't feel spoken to until I saw that turtle get tossed in this film.
There it is. That's how you can get into this movie. Well, we'll take what you can get. Welcome back to We Drink and We Watch Things. I'm Mackenzie,
I'm Lamar.
and we're continuing our summer fun. I think it's our second to last week, right?
Yeah.
And we're coming in with what I think is maybe a little bit of a dark horse choice, but I think a good one, relevant one nonetheless. Moonrise Kingdom.
Which is our first Wes Anderson that we've done, right? And so I think it's
Is it?
I know it may not feel to a lot of people like a purely summertime film, but it is on a lot of lists, and I think it's the
Hmm.
first Wes Anderson that we've done, so it's a good time to be covering it.
That's kind of shocking to me that that's the first one. I mean, I think you're right. Or we maybe have talked about some Wes Anderson
Mentioned like
stuff
in
and
passing,
ancillary
yeah.
conversations, but wow, we need to do that. We need to correct that. Wow. Okay. Well, we're correcting it now. So we'll get into it. But what are we drinking?
So this was another one from our buddy Skyler, aka Mackenzie's BF, and he is at craft CRFT underscore WRLD, no vowels,
I
right?
think it's dot, but yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Craft World, take out the vowels, and there's some sort of punctuation in there. We'll do better at this going
It's
forward,
something
Skylar. But
cutesy. I don't know. It's his problem, not ours. Moving
if you're
on.
following us on Instagram, you can easily find him. If you're not following us, what the fuck are you doing here? So, yeah, Skylar made this, and it is mostly peanut butter whiskey. So you could do some screwball in there. That's what I use. 2 ounces of that, zero point 0.5 ounces of Chambord, and then 4 dashes, which is a lot, but 4 dashes of chocolate bitters. And then I know you guys also smoked it proper, didn't you?
We did. And by we, I mean me. I did it. I know
Good
that
for you,
he's the
girl.
bartender, but I lit this bitch on fire and it was fun. I had a great time.
Yeah, Skylar asked me if I owned a smoker for
To which
cocktails.
I laughed out loud when he told me that he asked you that. I was like, no.
Yeah, so what I did was I just turned my oven up to 500 degrees, threw some blocks of wood in there, and then set the
Mm.
glass inside on the rack for about 6 minutes. So mine is very hot, but probably just as tasty as yours. Don't try that at home, kids.
I was gonna say, did you really do
No,
that?
I did not actually do
I
this.
was like, I am buying this for a second.
Mackenzie,
Yeah, that
we've
would
been
be a
doing
terrible.
this podcast for like 8, 10 months at this point, and you're still like, did you really cook your cocktail?
You play it really straight, number one. Two,
That's
I
a
do
gift.
feel like every now and then, like I feel like
I'll
boys
say
just do
something,
that. People will
yeah.
be like, I am going to do this crazy experiment. I don't know. I feel like left to your own devices. You might.
Yeah, I might. That is a good point. So I apologize. But anyway, we are calling this the smoked some more, because it is smoked some more in whichever
It
method you choose
is.
to use, and it's delicious. It's
It
very sweet.
is. Cheers.
Cheers.
It is good. I will say though, if you got to get a sneak peek to our behind the scenes pod planning on our stories the other day, you saw the impetus for this particular cocktail where I made fun of Lamar's whiskey choices. And what was it? It was a s'mores whiskey,
I
right?
had bought a s'mores flavored whiskey months ago, probably 3 months ago, because I knew we were going to do the Sandlot at some point, and they
Yeah.
emphasized s'mores so much that I wanted to have it on the
Mhm.
ready, and it was sitting at the back of my liquor counter, and just forgot about it, and then it reappeared.
Yeah, which I found personally very offensive to whiskeys, as I said on the preview that you may have seen. But then I let Skylar and Lamar go nuts, and here we are. I'm participating in this atrocity that actually turned
Yeah.
out pretty tasty. So
See? So
yeah,
those of you out there who love sweet cocktails, you can continue counting on me and Skylar for that. If you want to drink
mostly
Everclear
you, to
Pure,
be
Everclear
fair.
Straight, you can hang out with Mackenzie.
I was gonna say, yeah, no. If you want to drink whiskey straight or bourbon straight, you can hang out with Mackenzie. You're damn right. And I got some good ones. Okay. Anyway, moving on. I will say it is good, but don't have multiple of these. Like this is not.
No, we're doing
You're gonna have a
this.
headache after if you do a couple of these.
That's what I've learned about. I mean, this one doesn't have any fruit in it, but I've realized anytime I add fruit puree, that combination of the sugar with
Sugar,
the
man.
liquor, the next day is rough.
Sugar every time. Like I said, Lamar's in his teenage girl drinking phase. He's coming out of it, but he's picking up the trends. He's learning what happens
I mean,
when you do too
I'm
much
young.
sugar.
I'm young at heart and I'm young at liver. It turns out I'm doing great.
Your liver's catching up though. It really is.
Yeah,
With this podcast alone, man, we're doing a number on it. Anyway, okay. Well, thanks for coordinating this really fun beverage for us this week. Let's dig into.
Before you jump into
Oh,
that,
sorry.
I
Go
just had
ahead.
a super dark thought, which is if we continue doing
Here
this
we fucking
podcast
go.
for like another 10, 20 years, you can literally hear someone drink themselves into the grave after what you just said of your livers
Wow.
catching up. So, hey folks, stay tuned. Who knows what could happen?
I love that we rely on Lamar for the laughs most of the time. And he was like, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to shake it up and I'm going to get real
Yeah,
fucking
let's get
dark.
real. I'm
Listen
about to
to
turn
us
40
die
this
of
year,
liver failure on the pod. Wow. Okay. Moving right along to this like adorable summer campy movie. We're going to talk about Moonrise Kingdom today. Hopefully get you a
Fucking
little
children, why should they be so happy? Okay. Sorry.
He's not bitter at all, folks. He's
No.
having a great time. But yeah, this is a fun one. It was a 2012 Wes Anderson film, like we said, and it's pretty well received overall. And I haven't seen it in a hot minute, but I remember when I saw it live, I really liked it. So it kind of checked out for me on the ratings. We have a 7.8 out of 10 on IMDb and a 93% critics on Rotten Tomatoes with an 86% audience. So pretty solid across the board.
Yeah, I saw that rating, and at least on IMDb, it's the third highest rated of the Wes Anderson films. And I'll say, as somebody who I appreciate Wes Anderson, I love his style, but I don't always love watching his films front to back. I was surprised to see that this was number 3 because I had never seen this. It was my first time watching it. And then I sat through it and I was like, you know what? This is the most consumable for folks who aren't familiar with Wes Anderson. It's only an hour and 34. It's a really cute story, but it still has all
Very
his typical tropes that he likes to use and his style to it. So I'm like, I guess maybe that's why, but I was surprised to see this was like number 3 out of his 9 or 10 films he's done.
Okay, not to go on too much of a tangent, but you said like you haven't seen a ton of his stuff, but you've seen some of his stuff. Like, what are some of the other ones of his that you have seen?
I saw Rushmore. I saw Royal Tenenbaums. I saw Grand Budapest. I think those are all the other ones. I haven't seen Darjeeling. I haven't seen
Asteroid City, French
Asteroid
Dispatch,
City. I haven't seen
Fantastic
French
Mr.
Dispatch. I did see
Fox,
I liked Fantastic Mr. Fox a lot.
Royal Tenenbaums, Life
Saw that one.
Aquatic.
Saw that one. So yeah, I've seen probably more than half. I've seen 6 of them, but
Mhm.
most of them I watched once, and I'm like, yeah, that's fine. This one, I was really enjoying for the first 40 minutes or so, and then it kind of slowed down a little bit. But I don't know if I'll ever rewatch it. But I think of all the ones, this and Fantastic Mr. Fox are probably the ones that are most rewatchable for me.
I really also loved Isle of Dogs and actually Grand Budapest Hotel. I think probably this one and Grand Budapest Hotel are my 2 faves of his. But yeah, I mean, I like almost everything that he does. The only one I like actively really didn't enjoy, I should say, was French Dispatch. And that's a bunch of vignettes.
That's like the newest one or second newest after
second
Asteroid
newest.
City,
yeah, and it's very different style in that like they truly are flat out different storylines. Like flat out different stories. They're supposed to be stories that the French Dispatch has done, and I didn't like the structure at all. I didn't.
So it's almost like an anthology type.
Yeah,
film?
I think of it as like
it really depends.
It really depends, and I think a couple of them were interesting, and there were some funny parts, but I don't know. It was like all the things that he's known for that he does really well. It's like he took them all to 1,000 and did too much of them. Was my feeling on that one. But I love Wes Anderson on the whole. I really like him, but that was the only one I did. Wasn't a huge fan.
Spinning off of that, have you seen every Wes Anderson film?
Except Darjeeling Unlimited, I think so.
Okay, so I wanted to put you on the spot because I was curious after seeing this and the handful that I have seen. We talked about a year ago in one of our very first episodes, we talked about Quentin Tarantino and the actors that he's, these directors have different actors that they choose to put in almost all their films. So I've got a list here in front of me of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 actors and actresses that have been in 5 or more Wes Anderson films. So I want to know if you can name at least 5 of them, and bonus points if you can get like the people who have been in the most, like the top 3. And a lot of them are in this movie, obviously. So
I mean, a lot of them are in this movie. I think Bill Murray, first and foremost, is
okay. You got number 1. You already got number 1.
He's in most of them, but then also
he's in 9.
Yeah, Owen Wilson is a big one for him as well. He wasn't in this one, but it's the first one he wasn't in. So
yeah, I wrote down that. So Owen Wilson's been in 7 films, and I wrote down this movie's really missing the wow factor.
Wow. See, and it's even how the wow you elicited from me was really solid. Yeah. Okay, so wait, who did I say? Owen Wilson.
You got number 1 and you got number 3. There's a number 2 in between, and then there's 5 people tied for 3rd place.
Who would be tied for 3rd? Jason Schwartzman?
Yep, number 2. He's been in 8. And I also didn't realize he's related to, like, we always talk about the Coppolas of the world and stuff like that. I did not realize he was part of their family tree. I went down sort of a rabbit hole with that.
I don't know. Is he? Because I know
they are cousins.
Roman Coppola wrote this, but he's brother
Sophia's
to Sophia
brother
and Francis Ford Coppola's son, but I didn't know they were cousins.
Schwartzman and the Coppolas are cousins. And then Nicolas Cage, as we've discussed before on the pod, also a different cousin. But yeah, they're all share aunts and uncles.
Okay. Wow. I didn't know that. That's interesting. Okay. Another one. How many? Owen Wilson, Bill Murray, Jason Schwartzman.
So now you got 5 people that have each been in 5 Wes Anderson films. You don't have to
I don't know the count, but I think Tilda Swinton's been in a fuck ton.
Yep, that's one of them.
And then he's actually, I don't think he's in this one, but Adrian Brody.
That's another one.
Angelica Houston.
That's another one. Okay, you haven't gotten any wrong. So if you want to try and knock out the last 2.
Oh shit. Okay, pressure is high. There's William Dafoe.
Yep. Okay, you have one more.
Oh god. Okay, well, I think, oh man, this could go one of 2 ways. I mean, Edward Norton is in this one, and he's in a lot of them.
Is that your final answer?
I think Edward Norton.
Congratulations! You just won the Wes Anderson game. We don't have an official name for it yet. It's the pilot.
Yes! Oh my God. Okay. Whew. I'm like, I was sweating a little. I was like, I have seen a lot of these, but I don't know.
I'm gonna
Okay.
get you like a $25 gift card to Applebee's for winning that. You did. I'm so proud of you.
To Applebee's, damn. And I
Yes.
didn't miss one in between too. Yeah. So I will take
You
it. I
no
will take,
strikes. Yeah, you killed that.
wow.
I'm
That
very
was,
impressed.
okay. Thank you. Thank you, y'all. I need a drink though, because like I said, that was stressful. Okay, but let's dig in, right? Okay, so director, obviously Wes Anderson, as we have said. But for those of you who don't know, he's a Houston kid, he's a Texan kid, and so we're big fans of him here in Texas. And he went to UT actually, which is how he met the Wilson brothers.
Okay.
And they like went to school together there, and they made a bunch of shorts. And that's actually how he was discovered. Was he made a short with Owen Wilson back in the day, and I'm blanking on it. It starts with a B. Anyway, he
Bottle
made a short.
Rocket?
Yes,
Bottle
Bottle
Rocket's a
Rocket.
film. Isn't that a full length though?
Well, it
Or
was a
was it a short and
short,
it
and he got
became
funded out
oh.
of that to make a full version. So anyway, that's how they met. And Luke Wilson as well was, I think, in Bottle Rocket too. But anyway, we're big fans of his. As we said, he's done a bunch of stuff.
Didn't they turn at one point? We have an Anderson Lane here in Austin, and didn't they change the name temporarily to Wes Anderson Lane for like a film festival week or
Yeah.
so? I think it was like South by or something, but
Yeah.
Wes Anderson
I think
Lane.
they've done that a couple of times. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're real nerds here in Austin. We love it. But also, he obviously wrote this. And then, of course, Roman Coppola, which we just said, he has brother of Sophia, son of Francis Ford, etc. But he has also written several of his pieces. Not all of them, but he did do
It's like
Darling
half and half,
Unlimited, Asteroid City, French Dispatch. I haven't seen Darjeeling, like I said, but I didn't, like I said, love French Dispatch. Asteroid City I thought was funny, but I don't think it was his strongest for sure. But anyways, digging into the cast and crew, as per usual, yet another hallmark of Wes Anderson films is just the fucking rock star cast every time. And it's like, you can't have one, you have to have 10. And they all, what I wanted to say at the top is my favorite thing about what he gets these actors to do is that you more often than not have an image in your mind of what these actors play normally. You know, they're
typically portray.
a typical portrayal. Their typecasting is X, right? And what I love about Wes Anderson films is like either they find their way or he forces them to do something different. Like they are never the typecast. You know what I mean? They are never here to play their typecasting.
I love that you called that out, because I had this thought where I was writing down about the cast, and I'm gonna give you two of the names that we probably don't recognize as much from this, which are Jared Gilman and Kara Hayward, who play Sam and Susie.
Yeah.
And I had looked, and I was trying to go off the top of my head of, have any child actors come out of Wes Anderson films and really grown to be super famous? And there's not really that. I mean, there's not a lot of child actors to begin with in his films. This is sort of the exception to the rule.
Yeah,
but
this in Asteroid City.
The way that this ties into what you're saying is that I had that thought of, it's one thing to put a child in front of a camera and have them play this very, it's not monotonous. This is very direct line of communication where they're not putting a ton of intonation and emotion into the voice. It's just this very direct human dialogue. I think it's easy to put a child actor into that type of, not to say that the folks doing this aren't super talented, but I do think that, yeah, putting a Bill Murray into a role like this, and it obviously he's got the experience at this point, but Ed Norton, all these folks, you put them and you say, hey, I need you to like do this style. And I have so much respect for them being able to pull that off.
And he is known for having a very specific style, both aesthetically and from a performance standpoint. Like he does not let you improv, right? There is no
break Bill Murray's heart.
Yeah, like he is a very like, you do the script, but not only the script, like you angle a certain way, you sit in this structure, the shot is in this frame, the colors are X, like he's very specific about the vision. Very deliberate. And it's how you get his aesthetic. It's how you watch a film of Wes Anderson and you look at it and you can see 2 seconds of it and you know that that's his work, right? Because he's so specific and deliberate. And yeah, I just love the performances he gets out of these people, because you see them in these really different ways that you would have never ever seen them before. And in this particular cast, of course, we have Bruce Willis, and I think he's a great example of that, right? Like we all have the die-hard archetype of Bruce Willis in our head, and of course,
I thought it was D Hard. I thought it was a German film. D Hard,
yeah, it's
D Hard Spy, the sequel.
It's a Christmas. It's a Christmas German film. You're right, absolutely. Yeah, but he's an action star, right? And he just doesn't play that here. And he doesn't play that, you know, he
Mhm.
also doesn't play that in The Kid, fun fact. So of the things that Bruce Willis was in, he was in The Kid, very different style as well, but very different than this too.
Mhm.
And then of course Pulp Fiction, Sixth Sense, like he has a very specific style too. But Edward Norton, also in this, I love Edward Norton's range, period. I love that he comes in here and he plays again a really different type of character, but he has excellent range. He did Fight Club, as we said, American History X,
Mhm.
The Incredible Hulk. Fun fact: he was supposed to be the Hulk in all the Marvel universes, and then the
Apparently
negotiations fell apart.
rubbed some people the wrong way, or contracts, like it didn't seem like a good pairing.
His negotiation was real hard, and they were
Mm.
not willing to pay him what he wanted. He wanted to be paid similarly to like Robert Downey and some of those, and it was just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yes, he was replaced. So, but he also was an Italian Job, plays again a very different person, but he's in a ton of stuff. Those are just a
I
handful of
go all the
things.
way back to like Primal Fear of
Primal
his. I think that
Fear.
I don't know if that was his first film or his second, but that was his breakout role, and I won't spoil it. His performance in that is just bonkers for somebody so inexperienced in Hollywood. Go back and watch that one if you haven't.
100%. And then I'm neglecting, oh man, I'm going to regret this later, but there's a heist movie that he's in.
Italian Job.
No. Yes, but no. He's in another heist movie where,
Matchstick Man.
nope, but yes. Also yes, but
I mean,
not what I'm talking about.
Rounders isn't a heist movie. It's just them playing
No.
cards.
No, I'll think of it. It'll come to me at the worst
Okay.
time. But anyway, very different performance as well. All I'm saying, Edward Norton has fucking range. The end. Bill Murray is in this, obviously, like we said, he's in a bunch of his stuff. I literally put as my notes most of Wes Anderson movies.
And that's it. He didn't
and
do
that's
anything
it.
else.
That's it. But then he also, of course, is very well known for Lost in Translation.
Mhm.
And then Ghostbusters. And then I literally also have the note being himself and being a Cubs fan. Those are
That's
like,
I didn't write because it's like you can rattle off the top of your head, I'm sure, like 20 Bill Murray films. I didn't write down any of his films, but I just wrote down, depending on who you believe, he's either the coolest motherfucker in Hollywood or he's the biggest asshole, or maybe he's both, and maybe it depends on the day. Because I
I
think
think
it's one of
that's maybe
those.
part of the shtick, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I'm going to be this version today.
Which,
You
like,
know?
good for you. You don't feel the need to pander, and it's like, yeah, you catch him on a bad day and you're not respectful, he's probably going to be a dick to you. That's fine. They're people.
Yeah, they're just people, right? Like I'm a dick to people on a bad day, right? It's fun fact sidebar. My friend whose wedding that I just went to in Scotland, the groom's story about me was that I yelled at him the first time that I met him. And I do not remember that at
Well,
all. And I
that's
do
my
not walk
story of
around
you
yelling
too.
people.
How many people have this first experience of you?
I don't act, we can't be pushing this narrative, okay? I don't yell at just everybody. Anyway, moving on. Frances McDormand, who's fucking incredible, and she's super fun in this, but she also did 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, which is a very tough watch, but if you haven't seen it, it's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Fargo, Almost Famous, which is so fun. I love her in Almost Famous. Nomadland is another really good one, for which I believe she won the Oscar. So yeah, she's a badass. Tilda Swinton, another badass. Doctor Strange.
And as
She
you're
has
going through all of these, like, it's just the word that comes to mind because you were talking about sort of the Wes Anderson style. And the word that I would say is reserved. Like, you have these high caliber, incredible actors, but you're asking them to dial it back just a little bit, where in most filmmakers' pictures, they would go a lot more angry, a lot more over the top, a lot more tears. In Wes Anderson, it always feels like people are arguing and there's drama, but it's always at like a 7. It's never at a 9 or a 10.
I think it kind of has this overall tone in all of his work, to your point, that is just shy of monotone.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
just shy of monotone, and everybody plays it the same, and it's very, very close to just being monotone. Yeah, I
Yes.
totally agree. You're bringing everybody down to the same level. Totally. But Tilda Swinton, again, like, she's a powerhouse actress. She's done crazy performances in these other roles, and she's very neutral in this. She also did Pinocchio. She was a voice in Pinocchio, the new Guillermo del Toro one. She's done a bunch of Wes Anderson, like we said. She also has a new film that I haven't seen, but have heard excellent things about, Problemista.
I haven't heard of that one. Okay.
It looks really interesting. She does very interesting stuff. Jason Schwartzman, Rushmore, the OG, like the thing that made Wes Anderson famous was Rushmore, right? Scott Pilgrim versus the World. fun one that I don't know how many people have seen, but I have seen I Heart Huckabees. And then the Hunger Games, the newest one, he was in the Ballad of Songbird and
Oh, I didn't know
Snakes.
that.
And
Okay.
he's actually kind of fun in that. And then we also have Bob Balaban, who's the narrator. And he's been in he's one of those character actors who he plugs into 1,000,001 movies.
Yeah.
But some of the standouts are like Gosford Park, Capote, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, those kinds of things. And then you mentioned the two kids, the young stars, who are not known for a ton of other stuff, but Jared Gilman was in this. And then he also did Patterson, which is a kind of a rough watch. And actually, Kara Hayward did too. And then she also did Manchester by the Sea, which was a really great film, but I can't remember her in that.
I saw that. I don't remember who she played, and then I also saw she was in Us, and I assume she was one of the daughters of the other family in that, because there's like the white family that's next to the main cast. I'm assuming it's one of those.
Gotta be. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't picture her in these, but I have seen both of them. Yeah. But anyway, they're killer cast, like we said. The score also, I love the music in this film, and I love actually the orchestral narration, which we'll get into in a minute. But the score is done by Alexander Desplat, and he's done a lot of film scores. I can't think of a single one right now, but I remember that this has been one of the most unique ones because, again, they're playing it, but there is an orchestral narration. And my question to you, I asked Skylar this too when we were watching it. Do you ever remember listening to those when you were a kid, like in music class or anything? Like that was a common thing. People would narrate the movements of orchestra music.
No, I don't. I mean, I didn't take a ton of music classes as a kid, just the ones that I was required to. I think I discovered that I wanted to be in a band way too late in life. So it's like I wish I had gone to music class when I was in elementary school or high school, but yeah.
We've talked about it before on the pod. I had a real bad accident when I was a kid, and so I wasn't allowed to go to like PE and recess and stuff.
Did you say accent or accident?
Accident.
It's come up enough times on the pod that I can kind of make light of it, but I thought they were like, she has a very bad Brooklyn accent. She's not allowed in this class.
If I did have an accent, then that would have really worked. I unfortunately don't. I wish I had a cool one. But yeah, I should have spent my time doing that. Instead, I spent my time in extra music classes and extra computer classes, which both I think contribute deeply to how I turned out. But anyway, I would listen to those orchestral narrations, and it's so nostalgic for me actually to hear that in this movie. I think it's so fun. Like I could listen to somebody talk through orchestral music for like hours.
I'm really glad that you called that out. Yeah, we're on like the same wavelength today because I don't typically write down when the score of a film is hitting for me. Like it doesn't happen that frequently. But in this, it was about an hour into the movie or an hour and 10. One of the tracks, I just went, man, this score kind of rips. Like it's very strong. They're using a lot of tribal type drums. Like it sounds very summer campy. And I wanted to give that shout out to Alexander Desplat because they have that composition at the very beginning in the opening scene of the film where that's sort of scoring this intro, and then in the closing credits they do the same thing with his composition. I was just sitting there taking notes on the closing, and then suddenly halfway through the credits they play that not joke but they play that again and say, oh, here's this guy's composition, here's us narrating the different instruments. And I thought that was just super respectful and cool for them to do.
It's super cool. I really enjoy it. And I love when a score stands out, like you said. I think I probably do notice it more than others, and I have a handful that come to mind, but there are ones that like to this day, it's the thing I remember about the movie. Like Theory of Everything is a great example of that. Like I remember the score more than I feel like I remember the movie. And anyway, this was a really fun one, really good.
I'm sorry, before we move on, he did win Oscars for Grand Budapest, which is another one you mentioned. And he won for Shape of Water. So those are his two big Oscar wins, but he's done a bunch of other stuff. He did the last two Harry Potter movies. So Deathly Hallows, which is weird that he didn't do any of the first 6, but he got brought in to do the climax. Oh.
Yeah, that is interesting because especially with who was on the Harry Potters before. Big deal. Anyway, okay, well that's cool. We spent 12 years on that because I was geeking out for 90% of it. I apologize. We're going to do very quick plot summary and then we're going to get it. So plot summary: 2 12-year-olds who live on an island fall in love with each other and elope into the wilderness. While people set out on a search mission, a violent storm approaching them catches their attention. which like what a cliffhanger of a summary, by the way.
Plus, that word elope is being very literally used.
It is
Spoiler.
very literally used, and it's like it's so weird to think of these little children eloping, and
Yeah.
they super do. Anyway, and then one last production note: this thing had a $16 million budget, and it made 68.8 and was very, as we said, critically well received as well. So, yet another success story for Mr. Anderson,
Can
I
you
think.
explain to me, as somebody who knows more about Wes Anderson films, why did this only open in 4 theaters in 2012? He's established by that point. Why did this only open in 4 theaters?
I mean, I actually think that's kind of common for him to build up anticipation. Like he usually
Okay.
I've heard on multiple occasions where he has only opened in New York or only opened in New York and LA as a combo.
That
And
was
they're
the
like,
case here, yeah.
yeah, and they're like a soft open, and that's very common. And then they do like a full release. And a lot of times it's really timing for nomination season because it's not fully ready to be distributed. And you
Mm-hmm.
have to show the film by X date to be considered for that upcoming year's Oscars, or you're kind of lost in
Oh,
the shuffle. And so a lot of times you do a small release, literally 10 theaters, 5 theaters, whatever, so that you qualify because you have to show it X number of times to qualify for nomination.
okay. Well, that's good to know. I was curious about that because I saw that it had opened so small. It also set the record for the most box office per theater for opening. So it made $167,000 per theater. So times that by four, whatever that is. It still holds the record to this day. And I was like, was that like a marketing thing, or like was it? But you're saying it was intentional, probably for that reason, to do a
I think
slow
so. And it
release.
usually like builds Oscar buzz too when you're doing
Yeah.
that. And then again, regionally, like those are the regions to do that. So you still get a ton of film traffic. Like that's half the jam in New York and LA. Go see these new release like before
Yeah.
anybody else sees it. So I think especially on a good film, you can drive a ton of attendance in a short period of time.
Cool. Thanks for enlightening me on that.
For show. Okay. Do we want to do a spoiler free or we want to just dig in? It's been a minute.
It's
2012.
been 12 years. 2012, as we all remember, the year the world ended.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, if only. Anyway, yeah, okay, let's just dive in then. So, like we said, Wes Anderson, and I for my first note is Wes Anderson coming in hot. Like you can just
That
feel
opening,
the
yeah.
style, the opening, the cast, so beautiful where they're shooting as well, which I really love. I always thought he was actually from New England, fun fact, back in the day, because I
Mm-hmm.
think he has this really romantic notion about New England life, New England families. He's done it in more than one of his films.
Yeah.
And I think maybe it's his like prep school upbringing a little bit. He was in prep school for a while. I don't know what it is, but he's obsessed with New England. And I deeply relate because when I was a kid in Texas, I was also obsessed with New England.
I think it's probably a comment. It's probably New England, like what's that famous island out there? But where the rich folks live up there in like the Massachusetts and the New Jerseys and the New Yorks of the world, like the
Mhm.
coastal. I'm pretty sure there's probably a lot of similarities with like Northern California Ritz and glamour as well. But yeah, I can hear you on that. I love how he opens it with this sort of dollhouse approach, is what I wrote down, of
Mhm.
these side panning shots and then up down as if you're looking at the house with no walls from the outside. And I think that is
Mhm.
just a very Wes Anderson-y thing.
Mhm.
He has these box frames where you're looking at this very deliberate, it's kind of like you're looking at the four walls of the room, and that's exactly what the frame is. And your object you're focusing on is dead center, but sometimes it's really far back. There's all this stuff on the side coming in. It's like looking down a hallway, but he just does that for this first like 5 minute intro shot, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, he does. He has these like cross sections that he does of buildings, and I'm just doing a quick flip through my head of a bunch of his films, and I have not yet come to one that he hasn't done that. That I think,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm just thinking through it, like he just does it over and over. It's just these cuts, these cross sections of these structures, and like that straight shot. And I think it's really interesting to just do a straight on. Like, what would you see if you look at it straight on? It's almost like a theatrical theater literally style of
Mm-hmm.
just what can you see from this angle straight shot, and how does that change your perception of it?
Yeah, it's like framed like the outline of the stage. I also wrote down it almost feels like a modern art piece some of the times, the way that he
Mm-hmm.
frames the shot. I mean, we talked about Tarantino and the different tricks he does. It's like he always has the trunk shot. He always does this. And I think Andersonisms, they're their own separate thing. But these big scoping shots where if you freeze frame it, you could print it and put it at MoMA and people wouldn't second guess.
No, and they'd pay $1 million for it, 100%. Well, and I just love, like, so you go through this camp kind of to start, and you follow the scout master who's played by Edward Norton, and his name's like Randy something, whatever. And they are taking this so seriously. That's what's in my note. Like, we are taking it so fucking seriously. This is like a military level boys camp, and they are like going through and doing the inspection of everybody, and there's a storm coming and they're prepping against this storm. And I just love all the fun little nuggets through that walkthrough of like, how's that lanyard coming along? And it's like all knotted for Jesus. It looks terrible. He's like, not good. And the tree house that's 100 feet in the air and unstable.
Right here.
Right here. And that thing's going to blow over in a storm. And then he's like, this one kid is coming up and he's burning ants. And his reaction is not like, hey, you're literally playing with fire. It's uniform violation. It's so funny. He goes and inspects the fireworks and he's holding his cigarette just away.
I loved that gag too. We talked about this last week with What Out America. I love it when a joke is not so like it's obvious. I'm not going to say it's not obvious, but it's not addressed.
And it's not verbal, a non-verbal joke.
Holding his cigarette, not putting it out while going near the fireworks, but just doing it out of safety's sake. I liked that a lot. And then 2 minutes after that, they're trying to get into Sam's tent, and he's like, it's zipped from the inside. And he could easily just unzip it, but he takes out his Swiss Army knife and takes the little tool for unzipping. That, again, indirect joke, but still very funny.
Because you can't do it without a tool. You're at the camp. You're a scoutmaster. You have to use the tool. Yeah, and it's so funny. And they have this kid who's like recklessly cycling, and he's like, "This is your second warning," but still, like, go drive off on the motorcycle. It's just one. It is one joke after another, quick succession. Some verbal, some non, and it's just it hits right away. And then he sits at this big long table. He says hello to Chef, which is this kid, which I think is hilarious. He's cooking for all these people. And he reads this Indian Corn magazine. And I have to ask you, did you read the letter?
I thought you were going to ask, did I read Indian Corn magazine as a kid? No, I did not.
The letter that, like, the letter from this major scoutmaster. It's like the letter from an editor in a magazine normally. But it's the Harvey Keitel is Commander Pierce in the film.
I saw the little still frame, like the photo of him, but I didn't pause it long enough to read it. What does it say?
I literally paused it to read it because why not? But it was so funny. So he's talking about, the value, basically. It's like this whole long diatribe. And the reason this is so funny to me, I have to add, Harvey Keitel is this person, right? This is the character I need you to have in your head. And he's going on this whole long letter about like what it means to be a scout, and that it's easy to be lazy and like to not want to wake up in the morning and not make your bunk and not, all these things. Mm-hmm. And he references the sloth in the letter. He's like, it's easy to be like a sloth, and the sloth does this and sloth does that. And it's so lazy and you don't achieve the things of the day that you should do. And then he literally pauses and has this, on second thought, I can recognize that the sloth is peaceful and happy in his environment, and maybe we should learn something from the sloth. And you're just like, why did I read a full page of you trying to encourage me not to be lazy? And then you're like, you know what? On second thought, that fucking sloth.
But that feels like such a Wes Anderson thing to do, to be like, I'm going to put this here because people are going to think it's an Easter egg, but it's really just this contradiction that goes nowhere.
It's so funny though. I don't know why. And again, just imagining Harvey Keitel like typing up this thing, I don't know. It just tickled me. I thought it was hilarious.
Before we jump too much further into like where the plot goes from here, right before we meet Edward Norton, how did you feel? And again, maybe this is a Wes Anderson thing that I'm not always a huge fan of, but how did you feel about the actual sort of fourth wall breaking narrator to start us off? Lets us know, here's the situation. And oh, by the way, there's a big storm coming in 3 days. I don't personally love his use throughout the film.
I like it. I mean, but I like that maybe it is a Wes Anderson thing, like anticipating someone like that, because he does have people like that in a lot of his films.
Yeah.
Because I kind of enjoy that cutaway to give you some context, but also not give you the whole story. right? There's still a lot that you learn from this by just watching it, but he kind of tees you up for the where this could go. And I don't know, I like an element of foreshadowing where you kind of have a little bit of an anticipation factor here. Like in the storm that he mentions at the top becomes very important later. You don't know to what degree it will and how that's going to manifest, but I do like that it becomes a big part of the story. And it's kind of at this point just like a little nugget. But I can see how it distracts a little. Like I get that, but I don't know. I think it's also how it's shot for me that I really like it. Like he just
I
like
like
pops
that
on the screen.
point of it, of they're cutting to different random locations, but again, he's framed in this really artful way by Anderson. So I
Mm-hmm.
do not
Mm-hmm.
only in this sequence, but I think at the very end when he does
Yeah.
closing sort of thing, it's very good to look at. But I think it walks that line between what is foreshadowing versus what is exposition a little bit. But it's again, it's such a. I wrote down WA every time I wanted to write Wes Anderson on my notes today, and it's such a WA thing because we're buddies. So it's just such a
Obviously,
him
hashtag
thing
besties.
of like, hey, we're gonna try this and see what people think of it. It didn't super land with me, but I didn't hate it either. I was just curious your thoughts. So
Yeah, I mostly like it. And I think to your point, I do think a lot of it is how it's shot. And especially here, again, like this is shot primarily in Rhode Island and it's gorgeous. Like you're in these beautiful woods and you're on these seasides
mhm.
and all these things. And so like it just is physically also beautiful to look at almost every single shot, you know.
Yeah, it's a beautiful film. The last thing that I'll say about this guy is I do think it is done in a tongue-in-cheek way when he shows up to sort of not save the day, but to say, oh, this conflict that you're all having of not being able to find these kids, I know exactly where him being in this opening scene and giving that almost pointless monologue and
Yeah.
giving us this exposition is what makes it more acceptable, I think, when he shows up and says, I know where the kids are. So maybe it is this tongue-in-cheek sort of humor of Anderson's.
Yeah, I think so. And I also think like the way he to your point at the top, he doesn't use a ton of kids, but the way he uses kids is in a very adult way.
Hmm.
And it is very tongue in cheek of like these kids are being treated, I think, as far as what their potential storylines are and the way that they talk and the way that they act is the same as everyone else in the
Yeah.
film. And I think that's the thing is like everyone is on a certain equilibrium in all of his films and in this one too, right? Like nobody acts especially parental or adult versus childlike or immature,
Hmm.
right? Like everyone takes everybody the same level of serious, you know? And what it's so funny because this kid writes this fucking letter of resignation from the scouts. Like it's the most formal thing you could
Yeah.
do to be like, you know what? I don't really want to be a scout anymore. I'm gonna write a literal letter of resignation. And I just love the Shawshank, homage of breaking out of the tent that you could unzip. But let's pull open the poster and look at how he broke out and ran away. Like it's hysterical.
Yeah, it's really good. I don't know if it's just having these characters all speak at that same level or if it's more, they always tell you not to talk down to children, like don't do
Mm,
baby talk once a child reaches a certain age, like speak to them like they're
yeah.
adults and they'll learn to speak like adults. And I feel like that's sort of how the characters in this film are. They have their own problems and we never feel like we're watching full-on kids. It is very innocent, but they have
Right.
problems and struggles and emotions that they're feeling similar to the adults in this film.
Yeah, I think they're treated with a certain level of validation of their experience.
Yeah,
Of like,
that's a
this
good way to
is
put it.
totally valid to live and to think that this is the most important thing to ever happen in your life because to date it is, right?
Mhm.
And your life is limited to these parameters and these experiences. And of course, that would make this really a totally valid situation. And I think I like the peppering in of these nuggets about the kids. Like, with him, he's a foster kid. You find that out. You get the hilarious but terrible conversation with his foster parents of like,
Yeah.
we can't invite him back, but thanks,
Yeah.
appreciate you. And I love that whole conversation goes on with you not understanding that he's a foster kid at first. You're
Yeah.
at least not explicitly, like you're maybe reading the room, but explicitly Bruce Willis and Edward Norton are like, what the fuck? What do you mean you can't take your kid? What am I supposed to do with him? I love that line of like, what am I supposed to do with him?
Yeah. It's all
Uh,
very absurd. This is the second week in a row that I'm going to use that word a million times, but it's played seriously, but you
Yeah.
understand this is a totally ridiculous. And if this were a real police officer, they would be losing their shit on the phone, right?
Oh,
But
100%.
because
But they're
it's a
keeping it
Wes
cool.
Anderson film, yeah, it's just like, oh, well, what do you mean you can't do this? Oh, well, that doesn't make sense. Like, it's very straightforward. Yeah.
But it's still like the most emotional you see him too is him being like, "What
Yes.
do you mean you can't take him?" And it's not at 1,000; it's at maybe 50, right? But he's still heightened and it's noticeable. And then I love the nugget about her too. Like they're kind of these misfits. Like he's this misfit for this reason and has
Yeah.
this issue, and then he wants a home and he wants to go home and have a family or whatever. But she wants to get away from her family and get away from home, and they make lots of homages and references to her being a troubled child, the
Mm.
pamphlet that she finds and how frustrating that is for her and all these things. And so they're on different ends of this dilemma and this experience and they find each other and
Yeah,
like
like that's what connects them.
yeah. I think
Yeah,
it's
and that
interesting.
apparently that the pamphlet thing was something that actually happened to Wes Anderson when he was a kid. Like he
Yeah.
found something, a similar piece of literature in his parents' house, and he said something similar to like, uh, "I knew exactly who it was talking about. Yeah, I had siblings, but I knew it was about me." So that the fact that that's based on a true story is just heartbreaking. But he did all right. He's doing okay for himself.
I mean, that literally was me as a kid. In my parents' eyes, at least, I was very much the kid who acted out and like they couldn't figure out how to deal with. And that was something you were very aware of. And I can tell you, we're fine. Everything's fine. No drama here, guys. Calm down. But I just mean, I can tell you as a kid, that is, you're aware of it. And you're like,
Hmm.
okay, like I appreciate that Wes Anderson's response to this is validating these kids' experiences and going, this is the most important thing in their life. This is normal that they're
Hmm.
going through this and they're not like broken or weird or bad because of that. I love how he frames them for that reason because as a kid, you just want to be understood. You just want people to take your life seriously and your experience seriously. And it's when adults and kids like can't reach each other there that it gets really hard. And that's what her parents are struggling with. They don't know how to deal with her. And so she runs away.
Yeah. And speaking of troubled children, we're critiquing these main two characters. But can we talk about how all these other scouts are bringing weapons on a search and rescue? They just
I have that note too. They're
what
crazy
the
fucking
fuck?
weapons.
Yeah. Obviously, it's not funny because we eventually lose Snoopy because of it. Like the dog dies because of all this. But when it first happened, I was like, "This is why are these kids bringing clubs with nails in the
Clubs with
hand to like,
nails poking
yeah,
out of them.
on a search and rescue?"
I literally have in my notes, this is not a rescue party. This is knives and pitchforks, man.
Hmm.
Like this is wild. And I got so excited when I saw Snoopy because if you've met me, dog,
You love
I can't
dogs.
I can't be
Yes.
held responsible for how I behave when a dog is present. And so I was just losing my mind. Ah, Snoopy, I'm so excited. And then the knives and pitchforks happen and you're like, "Oh shit. Oh shit."
Yeah.
And that was like it was not good. I'm not happy about it right now. I'm not happy about it. But yes, these fucking kids get into it and the dog dies. I could cry right now, is what I'm saying. Like that's
Mm.
so wrong. It's so wrong.
It's heartbreaking. I don't I know we're jumping around a lot, but the line where she says, "Was he a good dog?" And he goes, "Who's to say?" Like,
I
of course he's a
know.
good dog. We know he's a good dog. They're all good dogs.
I have that in my notes. I was like, obviously you've never encountered a dog because every dog is a good dog. Like what is wrong with you?
I think maybe Snoopy had like one of those tattoos that says "Only God can judge me," because it's like, who can say whether he's a good dog
Who
or not?
can say?
Yeah.
She also has a cat, so I think she's a cat person, which is
Yeah.
a whole other conversation.
Ooh. Okay.
But I say with talking no shade to the man that I live with, love you. But then she has strong Emma Watson vibes as well. Is something I didn't want to forget to mention about her.
Hmm.
Like she looks like her. She has this energy. Like she's very interesting to me in that way too. Like she kind of plays it similarly. I feel like.
Yeah, she reminds me of a young Emma Watson. I
Hmm.
originally, when I was jumping on her IMDb, I went, "Oh, is she this girl?" Because I thought she might have been. Who's the actress that's in Poor Things? She has such a small part. She's like Willem Dafoe's other daughter, kind of like other creation. I don't want to spoil anything in that movie, but you'll know her when you see her. Brunette, like big eyes, just like this. I thought it
Yeah,
might be her, but it's not
yeah.
her. But I do see Emma Watson as well.
Yeah, I just like her energy and her style and her like she has a she's struggling obviously with her family and stuff, but she has kind of a confidence about her
Yeah.
of like just a calm confidence, right? Like a just I am who I am, and I like that about both of these kids. Actually, they maybe are the misfits, they're maybe the outcasts, they maybe aren't understood by family or friends or whatever, but they just know who they are and are comfortable with it. They're not even defending it or judging it or saying it's perfect. They just kind of like are comfortable, and I think that's so cool to see in a kid type of character. And I love one of her lines that she says where she's like, I lost my temper at myself. Like, I just was like, she gets mad at herself too. She's like, you know what? I'm a real pain in the ass sometimes. Like,
I to your point about they're so self-assured and cool, calm, and collected. That
mhm.
first interaction that we see between them when he sneaks backstage at the play and like walks into the dressing room and is talking to
Yeah.
her, and they're just sort of like tuning out the other 5 people in the room with them and how
Oh,
inappropriate this
in
could
the
potentially be.
zone.
But they're just like shooting the shit, talking super calm. I was like, these two little sociopaths are about to go Bonnie and Clyde.
They
Just gonna like travel the
literally
country.
are. Like, what a foreshadowing moment. They could totally be little sociopaths, which by the way is more common than you think. It's literally 1 in
Yeah.
24 people, by the way, just letting you know. But yes, they are little sociopaths. I could totally see it. My other note about the theater thing, there is no summer camp on this fucking planet. And I can say as a theater kid, and you can say as a former theater teacher, there is not a one of them that has this kind of budget. Did you see that set?
In a town that small,
In a
no
town that
fucking way.
small?
No.
No way. For 12-year-olds, like there's no, I mean, that it was an incredible set. It moved, the painting, the
Yeah.
costumes. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I was like, if I had grown up in this theater scene, hell yeah. Anyway, I thought they were so, like you said, synced up right away. Like they just
Hmm.
bonded immediately. And I have to quote Skylar here. It was my favorite thing while he was watching this movie. He goes, too young for love, man. It was like he just needed like a cigarette and like to be at a bar, like sad and bitter. Like it was just like it was
Okay,
hilarious
so
how he said
let's spin off of that, because I think I didn't personally feel this way, but I can understand how there are some people who watch this and have a little bit of ick factor with what they're seeing on screen, because I think for the most part it's played purely innocent and as a
yeah.
realistic depiction of what dating as a 13-year-old is like.
Yeah.
But is there any part of this that was off-putting for you, knowing that not just the characters but the actors and actresses are like 13, 14 years old and we're watching some of this stuff?
Not really. I mean, I think it's pretty on brand. Like
Yeah.
she, of course, they swim. She's down in her underwear. He paints her, but her underwear are no different than a swimsuit,
Yeah.
if not more covering than a swimsuit, right? He's not painting her in a gross, inappropriate way. It's her and her kitten. You know what I mean? Like it's not none of it like grosses me out. None of it is like this is inappropriate. The only thing that's of course, as an adult, you're just like, okay, these kids like shouldn't run away
Yeah.
and they need to go home. But also, these kids are fucking industrious, man. I would trust
He's a
these kids to
survivalist, yeah.
survive. Right. Like this kid has survival skills. I love that the scoutmaster says that later. He's one of the best survivalists in the camp. Like, I think they're gonna be fine. And I was like, fuck yeah, this kid has got it down. I was literally in my notes, I was like, this kid could survive out here, man. He'd be fine. I
They
think it'd
could
be
have made a
fine.
go of it.
No, I think they're fine. I think to your point, I think overall the tone is very innocent.
It's played very innocent, and I would, for those that the one scene that I was a little off put for in the moment was when they sort of dance on the shore there, and then they kiss. They talk about Frenching. She says, "You can put your hands on my chest," or whatever she says. And that I
Mhm.
was a little bit like, but apparently the way that they filmed that, it was a closed set that day. It was literally the two
Mhm.
actors, Wes Anderson and and the cameraman, and
Also, like if you really break it down the way he physically touched her, because I totally hear you. I mean, like
it's
that can
so
be weird.
awkward and like,
It's
yeah,
so awkward. It feels like he's barely touching her. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
I don't feel like she's genuinely being fondled, is what I'm saying, which is the worst iteration of that.
Yeah, it's what every like 10-year old boy, at least from my personal perspective, thinks. So basically just me. It's basically what I thought touching boobs was when I was 10. Was like,
Right.
oh, you
Ooh,
just like put your hands there.
just
It's gonna
there.
be great. And yeah,
Just said it. And it's so exciting. And I just love also
like
that
a
again,
bag of sand.
it all stays very even keel, right? Like you don't see him like
Right.
neither of them get like weird or heightened or passionate.
Hmm.
They just are like oh, this, we're kissing. It's almost clinical. And I actually have that note about the way
Good
that they
word for it.
talk to each other throughout. They are almost clinical with each other, the way they talk about, again, like, should we French? And throughout, the adults are that way, the kids are that way. It's a
Mhm.
very clinical way to talk to each other and about each other. And it never feels, super weird to me.
Completely. Clinical is a good word for it. And then to that, like when we get to, it feels like I'm actually very glad that we went through sort of the runaway survivalist storyline in the first 40 or so minutes of the film. And then
Yeah.
they get found, we move into the next phase of the picture. And that's when we get into more of sort of the adult stories that are going on
Mm-hmm.
of the Frances McDormand character who's apparently having an affair with Bruce Willis. And yeah, clinical. Like,
Yeah. The way
it's
they
just,
talk about
yes,
it.
we are having sex together. And yes, it is nice, but we cannot keep doing it. I'm not doing it way too robotic, but
But
it's so
it's pretty fucking
straightforward.
close.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
pretty close to monotone. And they're like, and she even talks to her daughter about it when she comes home. She's just like, I can't talk to you about this, but yeah, that's happening. She totally acknowledges it, but is like, I'm also not going to really talk about it. And they're all very non-reactive as well. Like the husband kind of knows something's going on and he gets a little spicy, but again, not
Yeah.
relative to what you would expect for somebody who thinks or catches his spouse cheating. And then they cut it off, same thing, like nothing major really happens. And then it segues to this whole other point of really like, what do we do with these kids
Yeah.
under these circumstances? And we can't address that without talking about social services. Oh my God.
Tilda Swinton, whose character's name is
Social services. And like the phone call is fucking incredible and hilarious. When she shows up in the town, it's hilarious. Like she is social services, the embodiment of social services, and she is never referred to as anything else. It is hysterical. And she comes in and she just kind of wrecks shop and is like,
Yeah.
guys, you guys have done all of this wrong. Like none of you have taken this seriously. And I do think that's kind of a fair assessment, by the way. They're all like moving slow and not being super worried overall. And she's like, let me just handle this. I got to take him. This is a real problem. And then we love Bruce Willis's character is like, but I mean, should he go?
Yeah.
And you could kind of, I don't know about you. What did you think? I felt like you could feel this coming.
Yeah, I think it's pretty not predictable, but you can see it coming for sure from the night that they spend on the boat. And like Bruce Willis lets him have the bed. He sleeps on the floor. He shares I think it's a beer, right? That he shares with him
Yeah.
at the table.
And then not like one sip of beer, like a couple pours,
and it's in there mixing with his milk that he had in there beforehand. Who doesn't love a good dairy beer? But I think that's called lactose, actually.
I was going to say, yeah.
A good lactose infused beer. But I think you could definitely see it coming. I don't think anything really surprises you. I was going to say in a Wes Anderson, but I think there are some that do. But in this one, I think it pretty much plays out how you think it's going to for the most part at the end.
I think so, but I still think it's so
It's
precious.
wholesome.
Like, it's coming and that he's going to rescue him. And these kids also, the cute part for me is that they're not going to get separated. And again, their affinity or infatuation or even love for one another is not disrupted. And it is still like it gets to continue.
Well, it's sanctimonious now, Mackenzie. They're fucking married.
They're
So
fucking
in
married.
the eyes of the Lord, they don't have a choice.
They are married. And I love that they like just commit to the bit. They're like, we're married, obviously. We don't live in the same place and I have to sneak in and out of your house, but it's fine. But they're still like, again, still very innocent. They're just sitting there and painting and spending time together. And I just love that he becomes like a little mini popo. He's not a mini scoutmaster anymore. He's a mini police officer now, and they match, and it's so cute. I just think that's so
He's
wholesome.
a police brutalitizer in training. ETIT. But I also love cousin Ben's whole like prepping them for the marriage. And he's like, look, I'm going to do this. It's not going to be legally binding because you're fucking 12 years old. You're not legal adults. Your parents aren't here. We don't have contract, but we can do it. Sure. And they go, yeah, we're sure. Yeah.
It's going to be very symbolic, and I just love that they all lean in. They're like, yeah, we want the symbolic wedding. And I just love you have the heroic climax of he saves them from the steeple of the church and all the things. But then, yeah, like I said, it comes down to this kind of like back to this sort of even calmness of kind of things go back to the way that they were. And these kids get to still interact with each other and be married from afar. And I love like I said, the orchestral music that takes us out is so beautiful. And then the narration kicks in again. Um, and yeah, I just think it has this whole kind of nostalgic feel to it, the whole movie, I think
Like,
overall.
yeah, it reminds me of the same vibe as, stick with me here, but remember watching The Holdovers? We did that episode.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's wholesome, but it's realistic. It's a little bit over the top where people aren't talking exactly like real people, but the
Mhm.
ending is uplifting while not being totally soapy and sort of
Mhm.
fake. It's that same. I like when this went to credits, the same feeling I had was the same one as when we did The Holdovers.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's probably the best way to say it is like the feeling is the same. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree. And it doesn't like the denouement is very short. It's very quick of just like, okay, climax is over, he's staying, they're fine, and life's back to normal. Bye. Orchestra. Cue orchestra. And but it's very simple, but it leaves you, yeah, with kind of that wholesome feeling and that same feeling. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I think it's very cute. I think it's a good time. So, all that to say, what's your rating?
I think I would do a disservice to well, I assume if you're listening still, you've seen this, but to incorporate it into my rating, I do have to point out that this was really fucking funny. I didn't a lot of Wes
Mhm.
Anderson movies, and this one for the first 20 minutes, all they elicit from me, they do elicit some smiles and some like
Yeah.
chuckles or like internal like that kind of reaction. I don't often laugh out loud, and in this one there were a few times where I actually made a verbal like laugh out loud
LOL.
because there are some great visuals, there's some great lines, so I wanted to call out when Edward Norton's character is recording his logs and he says, we're searching day one, morale is extremely low because Sam is by far the least popular scout by a wide margin.
Yes.
Like just the
Yes.
deadpan of
By
that
a wide
killed, yeah,
margin.
just
Yeah,
like
I
this
love
poor
that.
fucking kid. And
Ugh.
then a physical joke that I thought was great, and it's another one where it's so simple and it forces you to think about what happened leading up to it, but where they do the second attempt with the group of scouts, where they help them escape a second time, and he says, how did they get you out, to Susie. She says, oh, we put a paper mache scarecrow or whatever in my bed to like take my place. And then when the younger brother, like it takes like
Opens
5 or 10
it
minutes, opens it, and it's this terribly drawn, looks nothing like her,
with a giant head,
with a giant
also,
head,
no
and it's
less.
strung to like sit up in bed, Ferris
Yeah,
Bueller
very
style, as
Ferris
if it's going to
Bueller.
convince anybody that it's real.
Yep.
And you just look at, and my head went a million directions of like these kids spending so much time on this thing. They think it's the perfect crime, and it's fucking terrible. Like that is what gets me, is that thought in humor.
And I just love all to your point, like there's all these small jokes that are not written, they're not
Right.
in the script. I like that Edward Norton's character idolizes the scoutmaster at the beginning, but by the end he has a picture of Becky, the switchboard operator that he loves in that place, and then he has carried and rescued the master scout when he gets basically de-scout whatever, he gets his
Yeah.
patch ripped off of him, but then he like carries him and he saves the day. And there's all these things that just happen that aren't spoken that are super funny, I think, overall. So yeah, I think this is one of the funnier of his, where it's like you said, just their literal laugh out loud moments for sure.
Yeah, I think it's the most accessible Wes Anderson I think I've ever sat through. Maybe Fantastic Mr. Fox might be the exception because it's animated. That's kind of cheating. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just like you can sit down, watch this, have some laughs, and the story's not crazy heavy, but it's relatable in some ways. There's a few things that don't land for me that also get factored in my rating. Like, I didn't even realize, and maybe this is because I was taking notes during my first watch through of this, but I didn't realize that the bully who gets stabbed is not part of the team that's like, actually, we want to rescue him. I know that seems like silly to say, but when they're all sitting around there and they say, hey, if you were an orphan and your new parents didn't want you, how would you feel? And then they go to break him out. I thought the bully was part of that group. So I was
Yeah.
confused when they get to the other camp and he's at the infirmary and they sort of have another fight there. I didn't understand that at first, and I don't know if that's
Mm.
on me or maybe that's just a matter of like you have 15 child actors in this
Yeah.
cast and it's hard not to get them all confused.
I was going to say
you know?
it's easy to mix them up for sure.
Yeah. Oh, you know who I didn't mix up though was Bill Murray's son, who gets a nice little his only film role in this with the one scout who's culturally appropriating with the headdress on.
Oh my
That's Bill
God,
Murray's
yeah.
son. So who else? Who else are we? Maybe that's why he never acted again. They were like,
isn't
fuck
his
this
name
kid.
Cooper?
I think it's
like
Cooper
that?
Murray or Cooper.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think all that goes into my final rating, and I think this is pretty damn good. I'd give it like let's say I'll go like an 8. I think it's really good. I enjoy it.
Yeah, actually, man, we are on the same wavelength today. I'm really proud of us. I
Look at
also
us go.
I would also give it an 8, a solid 8.
Okay. We don't agree all. Usually we're off by like a half point at least.
I'm so proud of us. This is a momentous occasion. Yeah, no, I agree. I think like it's funny. I love the aesthetics of it. I love the score of it. Obviously the cast is awesome. But yeah, I think like you said, the feeling that you're left with at the end of this one is really nice and enjoyable and wholesome. And yeah, I think it's just a good time, and I would highly recommend it. And I haven't seen it in a while. I think I saw it when it came out in theaters in 2012, and I think that's the last time I've seen it. And I was very curious about how well it would hold up, and it totally held up for me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. And you said like you leave it, and so that last shot of the piece of artwork that he painted, we assume transitioning to their little home base of Moonrise Kingdom, and that's the name of the film and whatnot. And then a couple things with the closing is that the good news is that Cara Haywood got to keep her cat. So the kitten that's in this, that
she
is
sure
her cat
did.
now. Yeah,
a
so
little
good for
kitten.
her. And then I had to go and look up in the credits when it says, I hope I don't butcher this, but for Juman or human, like Juman.
I think it's Juman,
Juman.
and
Juman,
that's
short for Jumanji, obviously.
obviously. I could be totally wrong, by the way. I feel like I've heard that name before in a similar context because she's Lebanese. So
okay. So that's Wes Anderson's girlfriend, still to this day, I believe.
I think she's his
them.
partner. Like they have kids. They've been together for
12 years later.
Yeah, a long time. But it was for her, and also the fort was named for her. Fort Lebanon is the name of the fort, and she's from Lebanon. So
look at that. Wes Anderson, what a sweetheart. What a sweetheart.
Wholesome. Wholesome. All right, homies. Well, thanks for joining us for this wholesome outing today. It was a good time, I think.
Let's do the opposite next week.
I was going to say, we are literally going to do the opposite next week. We want to just set those expectations low. We are coming back in. I actually think it's going to be fun, but it's very different vibes. Last summer entry for this month, which will be I Know What You Did Last Summer. Here we go.
Oh my God. 17-year-old me fucking loved that movie. And I can tell you that as an adult, it is not great.
I was going to say, I haven't seen it, I don't think, as an adult. So I'm a little nervous. I didn't really like it that much then, but I didn't hate it. But I just don't, I feel like this is going to be an interesting one for sure.
It's going to be a great way to send off our summer films of just, let's trash something.
That's what they want. Give the people what they want. Speaking of giving the people what they want, what can they do for us?
You guys can follow us. We drink and we watch things. Instagram is where we're most active. We've been doing a lot of social posts on there, so participate with our polls, follow us, share us, comment, all that good stuff. Make sure to give us a like and subscribe if you haven't already, wherever you're listening to podcasts. We obviously prefer 5 stars. That would be awesome. Mackenzie, do you want to threaten anybody this week?
I do. I only accept 5-star ratings. If you don't have nice things to say, don't say anything at all. What did your mom teach you? Come on.
If you don't have nice things to say, don't give us a review, but please continue listening to the podcast. That way we get view counts. That's
there you
how
go.
We want you to play this.
Excellent call. All right. Well, for now, though, go have a drink and watch a thing. Cheers.
Cheers. Did you know, this is, again, rabbit hole. Did you know that Harvey Keitel was once married to Lorraine Bracco? Like I
I think I
discovered
did know.
that, yeah, from
I think
like
I did know that
Goodfellas.
actually.
I mean,
Yeah.
talk about two fucking badasses being in a relationship
I
because
think
of
that's
her being on
too
Good.
much badass for
Yeah, that's
one
I can see
relationship.
why it didn't work because she's
Right.
probably Dr. Melfiing him and asking a lot of questions that he's not comfortable with, and he Tony
Right.
Soprano'd. He's like, I'm out of here.
Yeah, she'll fuck him up. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
I'm not yeah. I feel for them both. I think that's too much for one room. But also an admirable pairing. They were probably like game recognized game. You know what I mean? It is what it is.